writings in Nag Hammadi.
Right.
One of them is the hypostasis of the archons, and in that hypostasis they say their leader is blind, and he says, I'm God and no one else but me is God. Can you comment on this? So we have archons and we have their power.
Well, what I find absolutely fascinating about the Nag Hammadi writings by this Gnostic group, this Gnostic perception system, which manifested itself in a number of places, is how they say this archontic force, shall we say, manipulates humanity, is precisely what I found before I'd even heard of the Nag Hammadi writings. And secondly, how what they say about these archons and this Lord Archon or demiurge reflects itself, as they say, as the Old Testament God, Yahweh, Jehovah. The correlations are incredibly compelling. You know, they talk about this, this force, which is kind of an inverted consciousness that sees itself as the creator of everything when it's actually created nothing, that calls itself the only God, that is spiritually blind. And what does that mean in our terms today? It means it can only reach a certain frequency and does not understand anything beyond it. And to control humanity, which has the capacity and the potential, if we take it, to expand our awareness beyond that limitation, it has to pull human perception into its vibrational field, into its stadium, if you like. And that is what it's done. When you break down the way society works and the way perceptions are programmed from cradle to grave, through education, through media, through peer pressure, through parents who've been through the programming and then pass it on to their children, all these things, you can see that it is a classic perception deception, a perception download, because from perception comes everything. What you perceive, what comes from what you perceive is what you will do, what you won't do, what you will support, what you won't support. What you see as possible, what you see as impossible. Perception is everything. Now, having looked at that in mainstream society, to then go to these Nag Hammadi writings of the Gnostics and see them describing this force in exactly the same terms, this is how it works, through deception, through deceit, and through manipulating perception, it's absolutely extraordinary. And then, of course, when you look at this correlation between what they say this demiurge is and how it works, you're looking at the same descriptions of what the Islamic belief calls the jinn, what Christianity calls demons, and Satan, and classically, you, as the Gnostics said, are looking at the perceptions and the behavior traits of the Old Testament God. Where this old, I mean, people have often asked when they've looked at the Bible, okay, hold on a second. You know this loving God of the New Testament? Yeah. The same God as the Old Testament, right? Well, yeah. Well, did he go through some domestic experience then? Some transformation of his perception, because it ain't the same. It ain't the same. And what does this Old Testament God say over and over? I am the only God. There is no other God than me, and I'll bring you hell and damnation if you don't worship me. This is what the demiurge figure in the Gnostic writings is saying. I mean, it's quite classically, obviously the same thing. And the way I've looked at it is how you have this. See, the way I see it, in the end, this demiurge archons, they do take form, and they do what we call possess form, take over people's minds and perception processes, exactly as the Gnostics describe. But the way I see it is in its base form, and the Gnostics basically said that, it's beyond form, it's just energy, it's just awareness. Now, we can be aware in a balanced way. We can have compassion, we can have empathy, we can be peaceful. That's a state of consciousness, it's a state of awareness. But states of awareness manifest across the great spectrum of all possibility of states of awareness. So you can have states of awareness that are an inversion of that. That are, I mean, it's interesting that in the English language, the word evil is the reverse of the word live. It's an inversion of life. That's what evil is. I see evil as extreme levels of ignorance. And so what you've got in this demiurge, archontic consciousness is this deeply disturbed, deeply inverted, psychopathic awareness, which is seeking to draw everything into its frequency. So if you look at human behavior, if you want to look at the extremes of the archontic awareness in the human world, it's what we call psychopaths. Psychopaths have no empathy, they have no compassion, and because they now have no empathy, no ability to put themselves in the feelings of those who suffer the results of their actions, they have no emotional consequence for what they do. Then apply that archontic state of being, that psychopathic state of being, and then you apply it to the people that run the world. Yeah. You apply it to the people that decide they're going to pepper bomb cities of civilians in Libya, that they're going to manipulate proxy armies to create devastation in Syria. They're going to invade Iraq knowing that they're making an excuse that's a monumental lie. You can only do that if you have no compassion, no empathy, and then you apply that state of being to the Gnostic writings, and the demiurge archontic state of being, and the state of being of these bloodlines that dictate human society, because we let them, are mirrors of each other. So what I've found extremely compelling is the way the psychology of this archontic force absolutely mirrors the psychology of those that run the world today. And I think there's a reason for that. I think this archontic force is basically manifests in this reality as these interbreeding bloodlines started off being overtly royal and then went into the dark suit professions of banking and business and politics, etc. But these key bloodlines, like the Rothschilds, like the Rockefellers, etc., manifest also through their bagman and agents like George Soros, etc., Henry Kissinger. These are expressions in human form of this mentality, and you know, therefore, if we are going to withdraw ourselves from its manipulation, we have to withdraw ourselves from its state of being, thus its frequency band. So when you get trite, apparently trite things, like, you know, what's the answer to all this? We need to love each other. We need to have compassion for each other. We need to have empathy with each other. You know, macho man and testosterone man says, oh no, we've got to stockpile weapons, we got to fight the enemy. Okay, well that just keeps you in the archontic frequency band and nothing changes, you're just feeding the beast. And it's, there's, one of the ways that the Gnostics describe this archontic force is this expertise in deceit and deception. The great deceivers, and you see it because there's different levels of deceit where one layer goes on another. So the deceit that it exists at all. Then there's the deceit that the way it manifests, the way people see it manifest in imposition and war and conflict and the banking system hoarding the wealth in the hands of the few. Then the way to respond to that is to fight that that force, that manifestation of it in the human world. Fight the bankers, fight the politicians, fight this, fight that. And because of this, you know, inverted deceit, now you actually think you're fighting what's wrong, but you're feeding what's wrong.
Yeah.
And this is why we've really got to get in the alternative media beyond the five senses, beyond the limitation of perception of the world and reality, and realize that this world is being manipulated ultimately from the world of the unseen. And unfortunately, even in the alternative media, great tracts of it won't go there. Yeah. They're only interested in the world of the seen. And if they keep going there, they'll keep tracking the manipulation as it plays out in the world of the seen. And they'll identify this person and that person and that person. You see, they're involved and they're involved, but they'll never get to where it's coming from. And if you don't get to where it's coming from, you'll never change it.
Why would they want to oppress us as human beings?
First of all, when you are in the kind of inverted state of being, awareness, perception, that this force, archontic force is in, what we call in this world, and often isn't, but anyway, I'll use the word, what we call rational no longer applies. You know, if you go into a place where there are people who have very disturbed minds and very imbalanced minds, you don't apply to those people questions like, why do you do that? Why do you do that? Because, well, why do they do that? Because they're not thinking straight. They're not seeing the world in a balanced way. They're seeing the world in a distorted way. Therefore, what they will do and why they will do it will not make sense to someone who's looking at the world in a different way. Because they'll say, well, why would they do that? And often the question is, because they are that state of being, therefore they do that. But I think there's another reason too. The way I symbolize this force, and I say symbolize, I think it's pretty, in my view, it's just my view, it's pretty close to literal. It's like a computer virus. If you look at a computer virus and when it gets hold of a computer, you take the computer to be a balanced mental state, because it's made to respond to input in certain ways, okay? And then this computer virus gets hold. And what does it do? It takes over the operating system. What does the computer then do? It starts malfunctioning. It starts to do things that it wouldn't normally do. We're talking here about how this archontic force infiltrates human perception and human minds in the five sense body-mind level of reality, and distorts the perceptions. It's very, very similar to this computer analogy that I'm talking about. But also, a computer virus, because of its distortion, because of the nature of what it is, has no energy source. It doesn't have a power source. Its power source comes from that which it infiltrates. Its power source is the computer system it's feeding off. And you know, as I've researched this over the years, and I've you know, talked to people in the what we call the modern world, and shaman and others from the ancient cultures, there is this common theme about this force, because you know the Gnostics call it archon, but there are many and endless other names in different cultures describing the same force. But people have taken them to be different names and different gods, when actually they're describing the same force. And one of the common themes is that this force feeds off human emotion, low vibrational human emotion. The key center of that is fear. And it's my view after all these years, that this archontic virus, computer virus, whatever you want to describe it, is fear. Yeah. That's what it is.
But are we kept in fear?
Yes. Why? For two main reasons, lots of other reasons. First of all, if we allow this computer virus, if you like, this archontic virus to infiltrate our perceptions, we start to have the capacity to feel fear because we've been infiltrated by that which is fear. Yeah. And if you are of a certain frequency, and everything is in this reality, you can only attach to that which is within your frequency band. Mm. So this force cannot attach and feed off the frequency band that we call love or empathy or compassion. It feeds off that which is an expression of itself. So if you can first of all start to infiltrate people's perceptions and emotions and get them to start generating the energy of that emotion, fear and all its sub-frequencies like anxiety and depression and resentment and what have you, you have pulled your target into your frequency band, and two, it's now producing energy on the frequency band you can absorb. Yeah. And so when in the first Matrix movie, Morpheus held up the battery and said the machines have turned us into one of these, it very, very accurately symbolizes what the situation is. And only a few weeks ago, someone sent me a piece of writing by Rudolf Steiner, who died in 1925. Yeah. He was an esoteric thinker. Of course, he started the Steiner School, a different way of education. And someone had translated it. I think it was from the German. I was knocked back because he said that there was a force in the hidden that fed off human, basically what I would call low vibrational human emotion. And the more we get pulled into the material world, i.e. the lower frequency, the more it feeds off us.
Is this also the reason why we have this rotten financial system?
Yeah, because the financial system has basically been created as a web to hold people in a low vibrational state because they are always, their lives are focused on surviving, just getting enough to survive. And a state of being in survival mode is a low vibrational state, quite clearly. And of course, when you have a financial system which dictates whether you eat, whether you don't eat, whether you have shelter, whether you don't have shelter, whether you have the latest car or whether you don't, then if you can create a financial system where the vast, great majority of that comes to you and the crumbs go to the rest of the population, you're in a position of tremendous power because you're dictating something that is at the foundation of freedom, and that's choice. You're dictating choices. How many people, if you ask them, what would you really like to do? And they say, well, I'd really like to do this. I don't want to do what I'm doing now. I'm doing it to pay the rent. This is what I'd really like to do. And the next question, well, why aren't you doing it? Almost invariably, I don't have the money. So this is a straitjacket of human potential, a straitjacket of human choice. And it also does another thing. It sets out what you get paid for and how much you get paid for doing it. Thus, it is dictating what work people do. You know, you want to survive? Well, you do this. Do you like your job? How many people like their job? Not many. Oh, no. Get up every morning, mate, and I'm going, oh, no, another day. What is that? It's a low vibrational state feeding the beast. So it's all, everything is interconnected to everything else. It's a gigantic web of deceit. But when you do that, you see the web. You don't see this strand and that strand. You see the web. And it's very simple what's happening. It's so simple. But in the way it plays out, it appears to be complex, but it's really simple.
And when you're in the middle of it, you don't see it.
Yeah, because you don't, because you're in it and of it.
No. I have one last question. Of all the institutes and people we have behind the scenes, who and which are the most dangerous in your opinion?
Right. Don't start me. We could have days here now. What I've done in my latest book, Phantom Self, there's a chapter called Transphantomism. In English, it's called Transphantomism. And I do a chunk of it in these world events because what this force has done, and interestingly, the Gnostic writings in their terms indicate that this archontic force is in what we would call artificial, in a way, artificial intelligence. And what's happened up to this point is that humanity has been, its attention has been focused and disconnected from an influence of its expanded awareness beyond the program, beyond this frequency band of control, by manipulating people's perceptions to pull people into the five senses. So that's how they filter everything. You know, even in the alternative media, the vast overwhelming majority of it, and good luck to it, it's great what it's doing, but the overwhelming vast majority of it is still a five-sense phenomenon. And that clearly can be seen as you look around. You see people just focused on the five senses. You talk about expanded awareness, and it's like, what? It is changing, but it's still massively like that. But what this, that's why I call it transphantomism. What this transhumanism, as it's called, is, because for people who have come across the book, I call it transphantomism because I call this sense of reality, this self-identity only with the five senses. I am my name, I am a life story, I'm my religion, I'm my race, I'm etc. I call that phantom self. That's not who we are, I suggest. That is who we are, awareness is experiencing. And once you start to self-identify your experience with who you are, you're in the world of limitation, you're in the world of I can't. So I call that level of self, phantom self. And the reason, therefore, I call the chapter Transphantomism is transhumanism is designed to take this entrapment to the next stage by attaching technology to the brain, to the body, and not even, you know, microchips you can see, but nanotechnology, and connecting that. And you know, this is not me surmising this. This is not me coming to these conclusions. This is what the great global promoters of transhumanism, like Ray Kurzweil in America, is saying, that by around 2030, humanity will start to be connected, their minds be connected to what he calls the cloud, and what I've been calling for years, the technologically generated sub-reality. Yep. Now, once you have your conscious mind attached, and parts of the subconscious mind attached to this cloud, this technological sub-reality, then, as Kurzweil said, as time goes on, the cloud will do more and more human thinking until eventually there's no human thinking left. What is that? That's an assimilation of the human mind into artificial intelligence. So the answer to the question about what are the organizations that are most dangerous, well, I could name a lot, but I'll name two. DARPA, which is the technological development arm of the Pentagon, which is driving this transhumanist agenda, and Google, an executive of which is Ray Kurzweil, and him and this other guy, Diamandis, are co-founders of the Singularity University in Silicon Valley. Me and my son went there and had a look. Didn't go inside, of course, but had a look at it the other week. Silicon Valley is the location where this transhumanist agenda is being driven from as well, and you've got Google working alongside DARPA, and that duo, and you throw Facebook in there as well. is a very, very dangerous. It's a monster. And, you know, recently, not that long ago anyway, Google changed the name of much of the company from Google to Alphabet. Very boring name, instantly forgotten. Because, of course, Google is a buzz name. People say Google, yeah, Google, I know Google. So when you start seeing Google involved in making robots, in making endless transhumanist technology in their various outlets, it's like, what, Google's doing that? Google's doing that? I didn't know that. So you call it Alphabet. Alphabet, the vast majority of people in the world, almost everybody, will never associate Alphabet with Google. And to give you a personification of this connection, in some years ago, DARPA had a director called Regina Duggan. She directed this Pentagon arm. She then had this, on the face of it, extraordinary career move, and she became an executive of Google, doing the same thing. This summer, she moved from Google and went to Facebook. And what Facebook, Google, DARPA, IBM, etc., are doing is putting up satellites to bathe the entirety of the world in Wi-Fi. This is the cloud that Kurzweil was talking about. And a few weeks ago, there was a rocket at Cape Canaveral exploded. One of these SpaceX rockets, the SpaceX operation of this Elon Musk guy, this billionaire technological investor. Well, what that rocket was about to do was to take a Facebook satellite up to bathe the entirety of Africa in Wi-Fi. This is all this thing being, because if you want to connect the entirety of humanity to this cloud, the cloud's got to encompass the world. So if you look at the process, it's a very clear process of getting people addicted to technology that they hold, then going the next stage, getting technology on their body. This is the Google Glass, the Apple Watch, the Bluetooth, etc. And then going, and they're already going there to the next stage, which they call implantables. But even that is a bit of a diversion, as I get into in the books, because the real connection that Kurzweil was talking about is nanotechnology. And that's coming from the sky, I would suggest, in chemtrails. Because Kurzweil talks about the fact that what's going to happen is everything in nature, everything in the world, every rock, every tree, everything is going to be infused, as he puts it, with this nanotechnology, what is known now as smart dust. And everything is going to be conscious as a result of this. What he's describing is a world in which everything is controlled by artificial intelligence, including the human mind through this cloud, etc. And you know, you have people now all the time talking about, oh yeah, smart cities run by artificial intelligence, smart this, run by artificial intelligence, internet, yeah, run by artificial intelligence. What I don't hear is the question, what is artificial intelligence? My view of artificial intelligence, ultimately, is it's this archontic force which humanity, in its ignorance of what's going on, is building a technological vehicle for this archontic force to take over everything, including the human minds. They're talking now, and it's already happening, about something called the Internet of Things. The CIA openly talk about it now, where everything from your fridge to your heating to your car, smart cars, is controlled from the internet. Well, you get smart technology, dust technology into humans, you connect them to the internet, which is basically what Kurzweil was talking about. suddenly that which controls the internet controls everything. And there was a movie a few years ago with Johnny Depp starring called Transcendence, which actually portrayed this. It was set a few years into the future when there was an Internet of Things. And what they did in the movie was spread this smart dust nanotechnology, quote, on the wind. Humans breathed it in and were attached to this, this internet mind, which by that time had become conscious. And so, you know, it's this transhumanist agenda which is the most dangerous, because if we're talking about perceptions and the manipulation of perception, then if you are firewalled off from expanded awareness by having your brain body connected to artificial intelligence, where is human freedom anymore? There's not even the freedom to think, because you're having something else think for you. And for me, what we've just described here is the most important information urgently that people need to understand, so we don't get pulled into this by just thinking it's random inventions, and that somehow, as Kurzweil and his mates are trying to sell, that getting attached to technology will make us superhuman. It won't. It will make us subhuman, and that's the idea.